Hey, good evening, everyone. This is I call the February 5, 2024 working session to order. The Owen J. Roberts School District Board of Directors utilizes the working session process as a way to consider agenda items as one large committee for the purposes of discussion and debate in full view of the public. Time permitting, the committee chairperson may open the meeting up for public questions on items being discussed by the committee at that time. I'm going to move right to Finance, Building, and Grounds Committee. Mr. Harmonos.
Give me a minute here to pull up the agenda. Okay, so tonight we've got a presentation by the Schrader Group on the master plan. Let's move right to that.
Okay, good evening. So it's been since September. That was the last time we talked to you. So we were going to do 3 or 4 slides, and then we realized that perhaps a little Cliff's Notes of what we presented in September may help, just to stir everybody's memories back here. So if we can go to the next slide, you'll see what we'd like to cover here. A brief review of the concept site master plan, and then we'll get into the high school and the district administration, the middle school, quickly the elementary sites, the budget information, and then what will be new to you is some very high level conceptual phasing we've thought about for this site. So I'm going to do this with a couple of folks. We have Jennifer Lee from K&W Engineers, and she's a site planner, and Harry Petoni from our office as well. So we'll go through this and you'll see a little bit of an off and on from a couple of us. So if we can just start with the high level site master plan, I think it's 2 clicks here, 2 different slides. There we go. And we're not going to present the detail that we presented last time, but you'll remember that we looked at this image, and that image is essentially what your traditional bus circulation routes and drop-off routes have been on the site as time's gone by. We'll do this slide with Ridge Road, Route 23 at the bottom. Pottstown Pike will be to the left. And so the front door that you came in is the lower left-hand corner, and you can make out the auditorium on the high school. So we'll use this image. One of the things that we had tried to do as part of the master planning was to think about an alternative method where we don't have as much car and bus traffic crossing on the site. And so as we thought about this further and further and thought about how the various additions might happen on the high school, that brought a slightly different master plan to mind here, and it's the one we presented in September. Next slide. So this image, again, very high level, very conceptual in nature. What'll happen as you go forth here is if you decide to make some of the things happen that you see on this image, we will begin the land development approval process, and that will certainly steer certain things that happen on the site plan that you see. But the center of the site, between the middle school and the high school, what happens here is you move quite a few of the curb lines. You take the central, I guess we'll call it an isthmus, that goes between the 2 buildings, that walkway. You pull that out and you make a large bus staging area, and it's in, we call it a chevron pattern. And that's so the right-hand door of each bus is always ahead of the nose of the next bus. So when people come off those buses, they're always coming off of a safe direction and onto a sidewalk and into either the middle school or the high school. And the intent here was that you get all of the bus circulation centralized, and then you pull the drop-off areas to the periphery. This has worked well in other school districts, and particularly because you have so much topography to deal with here, this solution will help you with all of the car circulation and make sure that it does not cross the bus traffic, except for the 1 or 2 times when they do all come onto the site or do all leave the site at a certain point. You'll also see on the right-hand side on Route 23, there's a new access point And that will bring you up around the back side of the middle school. This part of the site plan would allow you to pull some of that circulation out and away from that Route 23 entry point that you currently are used to, right in front of the administrative building or right in front of the middle school. Oh, great. This will make it even easier. Sometimes when you have to make presentations and there's any kind of legal counsel, you have to describe every part of it. So we'll stay away from that. Okay, so this is the area that I'm talking about right here. You also see the intent to try to deal with some of the traffic issues here, and that we're actually already showing right-hand turn lanes and things like that to try to help the traffic patterns along in that area. The plan also shows, and this is assuming that the district decides to go this direction, that we take the administration building, which has so many ADA issues and issues that are very difficult to deal with, and put the administrative complex either here or on the second floor of the addition we've been talking about on the site here. I think as the team has worked through this process, there's a desire potentially to locate the administration on the second floor here, but it's all for you guys to make decisions about as time goes. What that does, though, is it preserves your nice green spot down here on the corner of the property that is so well used. So you'll see that there are separate parent drop-off loops established. This is probably more of a staff management circulation, but could be used as a drop-off point. And depending on how administration wants to set all of this up, you could probably set up a circulation route here in the backside of the site as well of the middle school to come in and leave. Part of this, though, is taking the tennis courts, moving those across Cadmus Road, and expanding the parking area in this region of the site to try to allow you more site parking with the tiered parking, where we pull away the existing administration buildings, start to tier parking down the site on this side. And all of this is done to make up for some parking that may be lost if you decide to expand the phys ed area here and athletics, and if you decide to put a new gymnasium out the front side of the site. That's going to lead to more conversation in a second, but ultimately the intent here was to cover some of the parking area back here, cover some of the parking area up here, and move some of those parking lots outbound on the site to try to provide more area directly adjacent to the building. So I'm going to stop there for 1 second. I know there may still be questions or some memory questions that you might have. Any thoughts on that?
Buses, with the intention for the fee with the Chevron parking for buses to survive in free, or would they still come in the main entry?
Yeah, so actually we're going to pull them all out of the main entry. And so you'll have either the opportunity to bring them in on the area further, I guess that's east on 23, or you can bring them in from Cadmus Road. So what'll happen is you'll start to do your own internal traffic studies to determine how it best suits that, and administration will make that decision. So next slide. So part of what we were doing with all of this as well was on the district property. You'll see this area, you're familiar with this. There's the access point right off of Cadmus Road. The idea here was to try to expand the parking in this area as well, put your tennis courts back here, and start to build some of the different field structures that we need throughout the site. And there's a little circulation road that runs through as well. All of this will be modified as time goes on, but it gives you a big picture idea of what you could potentially do on the site here. And you can see a very large number of parking spaces being located on the playing field side here, 624 spaces, which should help for both that plus overflow events. I'm going to ask for Jennifer's help for a second here on the next, because we're trying to move fairly fast because you actually have another presentation tonight. Go to the next slide.
So this is one slide that would be new to you folks tonight. As you are probably already aware, we are looking at the Kutz property on the opposite side of Cadmus Road as an acquisition for the school district. That property is outlined in the yellow there, and the rest of the school district property is outlined in the red. So this is something that we'll be sharing with the township as well later tonight. Just to show the proximity and the advantages that acquiring that property has for the school district. From a circulation pattern for sure, it would give us another opportunity to have a secondary access onto Cadmus and not necessarily force us out onto Route 100 up there at the top, or to have both potentially, depending on how many events you might have going on that property. It would also give us the opportunity to rethink some of those, the locations of those athletic fields. If there's anything that we can pull closer by using that property in the yellow, we would certainly look to do that as part of our next steps.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so now you've seen how the site master plan may play out as time goes on. Let's move into the high school for a second. Next slide. So this is a very simple massing diagram, but it does start to share where that proposed gymnasium with a seating of up to 2,000 students might go. We also have a two-story structure on the back side here. The ground floor would be an expansion of some of the programs. If you remember, we were also pulling the cardio space and yoga space out of the existing classroom structure, moving it over here, thus freeing up some additional classrooms. The goal over here was to renovate the auditorium in its entirety and add a band space and convert the old band space into the orchestral space and then leave the choral as it stands. So the idea would be to renovate the entire performing arts and add to it, and then to renovate part of the gymnasium area, but add more space over there. Go to the next slide. So this is just reversing or moving 180 degrees, but it shows this two-story structure here and some additional parking in where parking currently stands. And the idea here would be that you can provide a second floor that would accommodate the district administration. What that's providing for is the administration that's currently on this site. It does not allow you to move other portions of your administration over to this campus. Next slide. So this is just a quick depiction of the different parts that we can add. Again, you'll see all of this shove and shift if you decide to move the project forward, but it does include all of the program elements that folks were talking about last spring when we did all of our master planning questionnaires and meetings. So these are team locker rooms that feed directly out to all of the playing fields. These are those replacement spaces for the rooms that were right here. And this is just an expansion or reuse of some of the existing space with a potential boardroom on the ground floor, administration on the second floor. The performing arts is the addition of the keyboards lab, I believe it is, and then the band room. And then this is just reuse of all of these areas and a complete refurbishment of the existing auditorium. One of the big deals there was we were trying to get better sight lines, and we were trying to provide more room up front for the orchestra pit. So there are a number of things that we were anticipating for that space. Okay, next slide. So the middle school was a little bit simpler. Next slide. So in this case, we were adding to the front side of the building in this region to provide more space for your dining, which is really needed in this building. And the other side here was to provide an expansion for band, which the idea was you can open up the back side of it and provide more depth to the stage. There was some renovation also to the central part. If you go to the next slide, I think we have that imagery as well. So you can see here, we've got the band storage, we've got the new band room that can open to the back side of the stage and provide a deeper stage in that area. And then the cafeteria expansion really expands it significantly to the point where you can do 3 seatings of 300 students each as you go through. Right now it's showing 213, and you put in the same size tables and you can easily get up to 300. Next slide. I'm going to jump real quickly to the elementary schools. I'm going to need a little bit of help from Jackie on this, as well as potentially Mike and then Jen. So we'll hop into those two.
We had, during our first feasibility study, French Creek Elementary School was identified, as well as West Vincent for circulation issues, and then French Creek for moving the playground as well. Jen, do you want to go over the diagrams and then we can talk about how we might address those?
Sure. So at French Creek, we were looking at changing the bus drop-off traffic to this side of the school. So the buses would come in the main entrance up here through, we would expand this loop at the top, and they would line up along the sidewalk here to drop students off. and then reconfiguring the lot over here and expanding it. So the existing play area would need to be relocated, more than likely up here. That would be a next area of study for us. But then providing parent drop off on this side of the building, just on the outside of that lot, looping back around in this direction. And that was really the extent of what was being proposed at French Creek to help solve some of the circulation issues. Next slide. And then similarly at West Vincent, this one was a little bit more simple with a widening of the existing access drive into the school so that we could kind of put the different traffic in their own lane, to provide a lane for buses to come up and pull into the bus loop. They could bypass the parents. So the parents would be in this right-hand most lane, come up, pull into the drop-off loop, but buses would not get stacked behind them. Then they would have their own lane that they can come up, go into the bus drop-off loop and try to separate that traffic as much as possible. And then also the addition of a couple of parking spaces if they're needed on that side.
Sure, and I'll add a little bit of commentary on that. For West Vincent, right away, we looked at that in conjunction with security, and this is when Dr. Smith was the principal there. We actually did make a change, and we are using the back area. If you see where it says 12 spaces, and I don't know what that other number is, but we actually are using that now for parent drop-off and pickup areas. So we've utilized that space. So I think really all we're looking at right now, so we're not backing up onto 401 anymore. We're kind of more backing up onto the property. So we met with Mr. Detweiler, and I think that in speaking with Mr. Shelgren, we could easily modify, assuming K&W comes out, checks for utilities. It would be a summer project, just like when we're doing macadam and things, widening the lanes, having the lanes painted, just so we would be wide. It would be a summer project, so it wouldn't have to be a full bid project. So we could get started on West Vincent and French Creek separate from the main campus because there are so many things that need to be done with land development on the main campus and so many stages. So we really could run it consecutively. Could probably do West Vincent Elementary School either this summer, and we'll come to you with our capital planning in March or next summer. And then for French Creek, that's a little bit bigger. We would probably have to bid that project to relocate the playground, but we could still be moving forward with those items so that they're not waiting until the end of the main campus. And that would be a separate, most likely a bid project, if that makes sense.
Always the most uncomfortable part of my discussions is the budget, but we'll go ahead and talk about that. Thank you. So what we had done was we had put together on the left-hand side the budget estimates that you had seen in 2019 when you looked at these projects. And then we had gone back as a team and done all of the cost estimating for what you saw on the slides that we just shared with you. Understand that there are significant differences in program. So for instance, when you look at the two performing arts numbers, the one at the high school and the one at the middle school, particularly the middle school, you're not doing a replacement of the auditorium in this case. And I believe that that was in the original music expansion number. So things like that and changes to where additions might go and how they might be handled are why you see a differential. What we did do with the 2019 cost estimates was we had escalated those to current dollar values. And I think when we shared this with you last time, it was interesting to see how close the total dollar values came between the 2019 numbers escalated and the 2023s. So I won't really get into each number here. The one thing that folks would have to look at if you decided to move some of these projects forward is deciding if you wanted to go with the second floor district administration number, which is this number, versus building that new facility out in the corner in the grass. And in that case, you're almost doubling the total value. What's happening there is you're able to take advantage of a second floor of a structure that would already be built, and therefore you're not doing any additional site work, and you're merely building the square footage you need on the second floor of the athletic areas. So that's why that value is about half of what the other value is there. So these are the numbers you would be looking at. It's interesting to think if you took these costs and tried to figure out how you might spread those out over time, that was the next discussion that we had, is how might you phase this if you decided to move forward with that high school and middle school project. So next slide, we have one or two more numbers here. This was the high school and middle school campus numbers for the athletic fields that you saw up across Cadmus. These were the numbers for the French Creek Elementary site at that time and the West Vincent Elementary site at that time. So obviously we're looking at some significant dollars across the costs of all of these projects. Couple things to note, and that's the next slide. The high school does have some additional things that need to be done to it. You see a couple of existing conditions noted here. We brought this up to you last time. There are some upgrades in mechanical and electrical systems that do need to be done. I did look back on this, and the numbers, the proposed numbers here from the engineers, those are the 2019 numbers, if I saw that correctly. You were right about that, Jackie. So we just would need to make sure that those numbers represent the cost of the systems that you're looking at today. So that's the high school. And if we go to, I think the next one's the middle school, French Creek, pardon me. This was a discussion of HVAC systems, a boiler replacement, and that would be an important part of that project at some point in time. It's not in those original numbers that you saw on the prior slide, so this is something else you would need to consider as part of your future plans for French Creek. The next slide. And then across the district as a whole, there are some other items that you're looking to do. There are some additional middle school roof sections that need some help and some work. Much of the work around the cafeteria could be part of the overall project as well. So these are a couple of things that you're looking at. And finally, if we were to try to determine how you could do all of this on the high school site, no project is a reality until you figure out how it can actually happen. And so that's what these are noting. There are two slides. I'll stick with the first one here. So the light blue would be a phase one. And the idea would be, if you did go to the next slide, you would see that the tennis courts are being built across Cadmus. And therefore you can take advantage of that area either as temporary parking for the rest of the construction time, or you actually build in the total parking spaces you need to make up for the spaces that are displaced from the gym and the athletic area additions. You also do the center area here so that you start to circulate the buses towards the center of the site right from the get-go. A real reality check here. We just laid in dates and spans of time here that these projects might take. We're not suggesting at all that you start a project in April 2025. This is merely trying to lay out the projects in a time frame that they would happen. So if you decided to do them in 26, you start there and you just roll all these dates out from that point on. The other thing that we would note here is there were so many approval processes prior to even putting a project out to bid. And clearly the fact that you're working on Route 23, a PennDOT roadway, you've got to think about that as part of the overall project. So you have PennDOT requirements, you've got all kinds of county conservation district requirements, and certainly when you go to the property across Cadmus, you have all kinds of things you're dealing with there as well. On top of that, as you know, you have already exceeded your impervious surface on this site, so that would be another part of the challenges. So there's lots to do if you decide to move forward. But part of phase one would also be the new driveway to try to move some of the drive to the periphery, or it could be used as a construction entry. So there are a number of things to think about there. You would want to try in that first phase to also get your circulation off of Route 23 set up so that you've got the ability to move cars in and out a little bit more freely. The phase two portion then would be the middle school, because you can actually start foundations for this as you're doing all of the work here. And then three are these portions, all of the additions. And then once you have those additions up and running, then you're able to move people out of these spaces and renovate these spaces. So that's usually the progression of work that we see in a project like this. Finally, the administrative structure, once this facility is done, you would move out of there, you would demolish this, and you would build the new parking spots. So you can kind of see the progression of things on the site. The site would be under construction for quite a while. This shows a span of at least 2.5 years, so you kind of have to take that into account. And if we go to the next slide, this just shows you that you would be doing that parking area and you would be doing the tennis courts in the first phase so that you can move folks around the site, park people and things like that. And these playing fields would eventually occur as part of the overall project. So it's certainly not 100% perfect as a phasing plan, but it gives you an idea of how the district could move through all of this master planning if you chose to do this. So that's quite a bit of a review, and there's a little bit of new information for you. So I will sit back and listen or answer questions.
Does the committee have any questions? I'm waiting. Okay, I will open it up to all of the board members present.
I had a question about French Creek. In the parent drop-off loop would remain in front of the building. And then there is that blacktop space that is currently used for recess now, if I remember correctly, right? And so the proposed would be to move it to the right of the school beyond what is the bus loop.
Correct. It actually was there many years ago. So up on the top of the hill there's a large kind of flat area.
And what would happen with that? Would that now become additional parking
Parking.
down below? Okay.
Can I ask why the roof isn't included? I see that it's been marked on there that it needs to be done in the next 5 years. Is there a reason we don't have that included in a price, or do we have an estimate of how much the roof's gonna cost, or?
We have incorporated already many of those mechanical items in the 5-year plan that we present to you, because that was a separate study that was done by Albin engineers. And so they're kind of all sort of embedded into that. And we would just kind of combine this with what we already have planned to do. And what we would try to do is line it up with construction. Do you know what I mean? Like when we're working on that site, or so that, especially with the main campus, you know, when we go to renovate the high school, that would be the best time to replace those systems.
One more question. I'm sorry. I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So basically, if this moves to board for approval, what we're approving is for you to go out and figure out if this is what we can do on these campuses and start to get approval from townships and such like that, not approving any actual budgetary.
Exactly. So do you want me to kind of review next steps? Because I think that might be helpful. What would be great after receiving your input tonight, if there are any serious concerns about anything, we want to make sure that we hear those. And then we would want to move the master plan forward for the board to acknowledge receipt of. Because really what the master plan is, it's kind of like a roadmap, broad brush strokes, and you can jump in whenever you like. It will change over time. It's just kind of a roadmap for the district to use to be helpful, because we've identified needs with community meetings and had all this input received about where we think our school district should be going next. So then after we do that, we would, if you're comfortable moving that forward, then we would meet with David Schrader and his team and Jen, and we would also work with the financial advisor, Brad Remig. He's been before this board before with PFM, and it would be a combination of cash and funding. So we would really want to look at a capital funding plan that works for the district, because that phasing will be dependent upon the capital funding plan that we put together, and it's going to happen over time. So the dates that we shared, for example, starting in April of 2025, what that's kind of showing is whenever we start, it's going to take a year to get through all of the planning and land development approvals and permits and all of the things that we need. So it's just kind of giving you an idea of, you need that much land development time to get through those processes before you can then before we would even come back to you for approval. So for example, we would work with them on a capital funding plan, bring that forward to you, see which pieces you might want to do now or later or start. So we'll have much further discussion on this, but I think those are the two pieces that we need to do now, is put together a capital funding plan, see what it looks like, how it impacts taxes, because our goal is always to have the minimum impact on taxes stay below the index, never go out for a referendum, those kinds of things. So we would want to work through that. And then after that, if you want to move forward with 1, 2, 3, whichever phases, we would want to hire the professionals and work with contracts. And then those professionals would work through the design process. We'd meet with all of the individuals. We would work on a design. And I do think it's important that we do a design that's cohesive, because, I mean, I don't know if you want to jump in there, David, like we should make sure our design is cohesive, and then potentially we could fund it, build it at different
I
times.
think that's worth jumping in for. So the challenge, especially on the middle school, high school site, obviously, is that it's a domino effect, right? So you need the bus parking to allow you to get more car parking. If you add building space to this, you need to move the parking further out in the periphery. And all of those require stormwater management. And so each one is going to trigger more and more stormwater management on the site. So all of it is eventually going to be linked as one whole. So that's a very good point. If you remember back to the presentation in September, the goal was to make sure that we replace the parking at least in kind. So that is a big deal. And part of that includes the parking across Cadmus to try to help make up for all of that. So all of the pieces are linked in this plan. None of them are perfect. They all have to be designed, but it's a big picture. And I would agree, it's going to come down to what are the dollars and cents? What does that mean to the district over time? And I think as we did that, we would lay out a very concise schedule to show you what it will really take to get through the approval process before you can even move on.
And about that timeline that's in there, I guess I'm assuming that that has not been adjusted to when we would want to do things out of session, so that it's not impacting our ability to deliver education. So there could be additional delays on top of that schedule if we say, like, we don't want to start this until school gets out because we want to try to put this particular activity over the summer.
No, I think that has been looked at. So
It has,
the-
okay.
The scheduling has taken account, all right, these are summer activities. So if we want to, the schedule that David put up, if we would delay that, we basically delay it a year at a time.
Right.
Because things have to be phased in a certain way.
They're overlapped. You can kind of see what things are
So if
overlapped.
we put this off,
So-
you put it off to April of 26, but you can't put it off to September of 27. That doesn't work.
Right, or September of any year,
Right.
right? That everything would have to shift then if we chose a different month to start in, is
More
what
or
you're saying?
less.
Okay,
And-
thank you very much then.
And the whole permit process, there could be delays along that, right, David? So,
Yeah.
We're estimating a year for now, but that could change depending on what PennDOT says, what the township says, what County Conservation District says. So, there's a lot can move as this goes on. And the other important thing, to David's point, is that these pieces are all linked. So we want to have this kind of cohesive roadmap that shows us moving in a direction, and we don't want to have, something where we do phase 1 and phase 2, and then everything's kind of half done, and then things kind of shift gears for some reason, and then the pieces don't fit together because there's been kind of a change. So we want to kind of approve the whole master plan now as a guide instead of just like part of it, and then it doesn't fit together later on the back. If that makes sense.
Forgive my maybe missaying these terms. Impervious surface. Okay, so we're like maxed out with that almost.
Yes.
Yes. So how would, since phase 1 is going to be all that additional macadam, how does that kind of play into?
So we would take the whole really plan for land development to the township. And I know that we were working with our engineers and architects, and some of the areas when we're building on top of macadam, that helps us because,
Mhm.
we can see that the the gym and some of the other areas we're building on top of Macadam. And I'm sure that David or Jen can speak more eloquently about this, but that will help us.
Yeah. But
And then
also-
by demolishing the administration building, that too, we're going to gain back, which will go into the additional parking. So we really would have to work through all of that with the township.
Well, it's also the addition of the
Mhm.
pervious surface across Cadmus. And so all of that has to be tied together to allow this to all be doable within the realm. So yes.
Oh, so we get that credit over there and those, not yet. Okay.
That is not a for sure thing.
Okay, there's
No.
quite a bit of work to be done ahead of
Yeah.
time there.
Mhm.
And just like on the engineering side, there's temporary and permanent stormwater controls, so there would be temporary stormwater controls put in place to handle temporary increases in impervious surface as we're moving through the different phases, and then those would shift into permanent stormwater controls towards the end of the phase.
That's a good question.
Anything, question about veterinary medicine, just ask.
I have a dog.
David, that new entrance off of Cadmus Road, that second entrance that you have in the proposal, I don't see a phase for that. Would that be something we would be looking to do at phase one, to put that second entrance in to help with the traffic flow? Because that, in my opinion, that would be huge to have a second entrance off of Cadmus.
Yeah, it's almost like the Route 23 entry on the right-hand side here. We do think that needs to be part of phase one as well. So you would see light blue around that as well, certainly.
And when do we need to make a decision about that proposal for administration? The second floor versus the two-story addition?
So we haven't really thought about how that phases into the project if you do the two-story new building. We really were thinking about how it works if you do it as part of the second floor, because it's naturally part of that construction. So I think what you folks would need to do is have a discussion about which is more important to you, a standalone administrative building, potentially allowing more square footage, or the second floor of this that is going to be a natural because it fits there. So it kind of comes down to what the district thinks is more important, and we'll work from there.
My opinion is the second floor makes the most sense. It's less expensive, it's less impervious area taken over. Preserves that green space at the front of the school a little bit more. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
Okay, so would we move this to the board for acceptance of the master plan?
I move that we move this master plan to the board for acceptance.
Second.
And part two is, can we have a motion to ask to speak with the financial planning people?
We would work on a capital financing plan that we would bring back to the board, if you're so inclined.
I move that we consult with the financial planners
Capital
for
financing.
capital financing plan.
Second.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Back to
Thank
you, Madam President.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Go kill it at the meeting now.
So, we are, going to move a little bit out of order from the proposed, agenda for today. Because we are ahead of schedule, which, I mean, knock on wood, that's not wrong. But, so we are going to, pause on agenda item 3 as we, notified the candidates that, we would interview them at 7:30, and I want to keep to that, that point. And we are going to move, to Mr. Bentman and the mental health strategic plan update, which is agenda item 4.
Great, thank you so much. This is exciting.
You still have to stay for the whole meeting.
Yeah, I know. Whatever you need, Dr. Stout, whatever you need. So thank you for having us to this evening present on the mid-year update of the mental health strategic plan. So Dr. Schneider and I will be presenting the update. Really excited about the work that's been going on in the district and the update. And we'll go through the items. Number one, I want to thank the team members of the committee. So we have a committee made up of about 7 people that attend the Mental Health Consortium sessions at the IU and doing the good work for the plan. We also, probably most importantly, we also have many people that are supporting students each and every day, each and every hour, each and every minute of our school day. Before hours, after hours, during the day, and sometimes on the weekends. And so our teachers are number one, most important adults in the building, and then most important people in the building are the students. And so it's important, and it's important for Brian and I, and also the team and the consortium team, to recognize the good work that the people are doing, because when students are struggling, it's difficult for them to do pretty much of anything based on that level of struggle. And so the more help they get, the better that they can focus on the good work that we're doing academically in the building. So I wanted to make sure we account for that. This evening, we're going to review the mental health work of the committee. We're going to go over goal 1, which is our 3 to 8 social emotional student data. And we're also going to go over goal 2, our goal for our staff survey that we've rolled out in the last couple weeks. And then finally, provide some update on the student assistance program data that we shared with you at the end of last year. So this is basically a quick review of what we've been doing with the consortium, and a really review, I should say, of the strategic plan. So just a refresher, this is our 2nd year. We have another group of members that are with us at the IU and our UPenn liaisons. We're meeting monthly at the IU and sometimes twice a month with our team. That's a full day event, so we get plenty of time to collaborate, get PD, receive PD, and then move to next steps and talk about what we're doing. And then obviously our final result is our working document. So it's a 39 to 40 page document that we have. That's been updated throughout the year. Last update was actually this evening, where we added the nurses to the plan based off of the work they do in their offices as kind of a first line when they support students in their office. So there's plenty of updates that are happening through the plan, and that plan is then updated on the website. It's available to the community. So there's a quick, brief update of that. Go ahead, next slide. So consortium sessions throughout the IU that we've had. So we've had some good PD from several known people in the business. Specifically, we worked a lot on trauma-informed practice. Before coming here this evening, I spent an hour and a half with our new teachers with the YWCA on Trauma 101. We had about 30 teachers in that group. So these things are kind of happening inside the plan and outside the plan. It's a continuous cycle in the support we're doing. And some work sessions with our inter-district collaboration. So there are districts that are part of this again this year. We've been paired up with actually Unionville and working closely with them, and they've been learning from us and we've been learning from them throughout the process. And this big trauma-informed toolkit that we've been using and will continue to use, that the IU and the UPenn team have put together. One of the things that I think the team found most beneficial was this improvement science, the key concepts of the plan, the do, the study, and to act. And so it's a good model for not only our team, but some of our members to then bring back to their buildings to use in other areas as well. All right, next slide, Jordan. So our universal tier 1 programs, these are kind of 3 big differences this year, I should say, or big action steps that we have put into place. I want to just be very cognizant that this is not really this is not the only piece of the mental health plan, but just a a section, a dissection of basically what we're doing in each of the levels and what we put into place. So our collaborative guidance lessons that are being done in the classroom. If you recall, we kind of removed guidance as a special when we put STEAM in, and now so it is a more fluid, responsive practice from our school counselors that are going into classrooms on a planned basis. We have our second step curriculum, that's being used at the middle school during their advisory period. So that would be our middle school piece, and then our teen mental health first aid in our high school classes. Things are going well, and some things might not be going well. I want to remind you that there's always room for growth, and there's always areas that we are noticing that maybe we can do and change things a little differently here and there, and that'll kind of get into our staff survey and how we can continue to grow. But these are the three big things that we put into place. All right, so year two, another obviously one of our number one goals was our self-assessments. So a reminder that we have our 3 to 6 and then our 7 to 8, which is the same assessments. We have 17 items. Takes about 5 minutes. We've been noticing on using, as we take a look at the data on Linkit, average of the completion. This is based off of the CASEL competencies, which is a big social emotional learning collaboration of different types of supports. So academic, social, and emotional thinking. That's what learning, that's what CASEL stands for. And then the student engagement, which is our high school, and really ties together what Mr. Kohler and his team at the high school have been working on this school year and their staff there. So there's about 35 items on this assessment. It's about 10 minutes, a little longer for the high school kiddos, and that's taken through 9 through 12. Just a reminder, these questions are all public on our school district mental health strategic plan. I believe it's the last 2 pages or close to the last 2 pages on that plan on the website. So those questions are there. This is given 3 times per year. We gave it once already. We're in the process of giving it now, and then we'll give it again at the end of the year. We'll have a compilation of both winter and fall data for the board. Brian and I will provide the board with a more in-depth data packet closer to mid-March, probably about 3 to 4 weeks from now. So you'll anticipate looking for that. But for today, we wanted to give you a taste of our data for our 3 pieces. So I'm going to actually hand it off to Dr. Schneider to start with the elementary.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. So as Brad had mentioned, one of the main priorities or goals for the mental health strategic plan this year was, okay, we put the plan down on paper. We laid out some objectives of things that we'd like to do. And one of the things that we thought was really important was to bring some measurables to the table. And so we're going to talk about 2 kind of approaches to measurement that we embedded in the plan to help us understand, okay, where are we at as a baseline and how can we start to track some of this information over time? And so at all 3 levels, elementary, middle school, and high school, we came up with a plan to assess the students, or actually to have the students assess themselves with respect to some relevant outcomes. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then the second measurable that we'll talk at the end of the presentation is how are staff feeling about our implementation, and how do they see, how do they align with, kind of the rationale of the plan and also the resources that we're putting in place. So to direct your attention to the slide that we have up there now, as Brad mentioned, we used a publicly available assessment of social emotional competencies that's mapped to these kind of 5 core areas: relationship skills, social awareness, self-awareness, responsible decision-making, and self-management. The scale ranges from 1 to 4. So students were able to rate themselves on all of these items as whether it was something that's very difficult for them, difficult, easy, or very easy. We wanted to make it something that was accessible, particularly when you're talking about students in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, something that they could kind of relate to. Something that wasn't too extensive, right? So it's a 17-item scale. They can complete it in about 5 minutes, and something that's meaningful to them. And so one of the things that we did after we got the fall data was we said, okay, what are the themes that are coming through? What are kids saying, they're pretty comfortable with, and what's difficult for them? And so what you can see just based on the way that we set this table up, they're feeling pretty good about their relationship skills, their social awareness. One of the things that's consistently challenging for them is self-management. Okay. As a thematic thing, that kind of makes sense, right? That kind of jives, and we'll get into, as we move forward, like some of the specific items that they identified as, this is a challenge spot for me. So again, we're trying to learn as we go here, and this is kind of a baseline of what we're seeing. Next slide, please. We also said, okay, let's drill down even further and say, okay, what are the things that our kids are telling us that they're doing well with? Here we have the 5 highest scoring items. So I'm doing okay with getting along with my classmates. I feel pretty good about knowing when someone needs my help. You can read the rest of the items there, but it's just giving us a sense of what kids are confident. Okay. If you skip to the next slide, then these are the things that students self-reported as as the areas that are most difficult for them. The top 2 there, getting through something even when I feel frustrated, right? That was something that was closer to difficult and easy, or finishing tasks even if they're hard for me. Both of those, and you can see the lowest 3 items all line up with that kind of self-management, right? So recognizing something's hard for me, or something's like emotionally triggering, and it's difficult for me to kind of tolerate that emotion and still persevere, right? So that self-management is a challenge. And I think that was consistent from 3 to 6. And we'll also, when we get into our middle school slides, we'll see that there was some consistency there as well. Next slide. So the next question is, okay, we're bringing some data to the table. What are we going to do with that? How are we going to use this information? And as I said, we're learning through this process. This is year 1. We're trying to develop some structures and systems so that we're thinking, okay, what is the data telling us? And then more importantly, how do we respond to what the students are telling us in a meaningful way that says, we hear you and we're going to help you. So first and foremost, all of our school counselors and relevant team members at the elementary buildings looked at the assessment data. They looked for themes like we just talked about, and they also looked at individual students. Are there kids who are telling us they're struggling? Even if relationship skills are decent overall, are there pockets of kids who are saying, no, this is hard for me and I need some help here? So they took some time to look at those things and then figure out, okay, for our building with what we have available, how can we do something to address that? So just as an example, with regard to planning to respond to data, the folks over at East Coventry, led by Jen Morgan, our counselor over there, said, you know what, we're going to offer some groups, and we're going to make it voluntary, but we're going to say, based on the nature of your responses, we're going to have a group that works on relationship skills. We're going to have a group that works on self-management, and we're going to try to address that head on, in addition to kind of the universal programming that we're providing. And then finally, again, as Brad mentioned, we're going to be tracking these trends over time. We're not necessarily expecting to see a dramatic shift from fall to winter, but what we'd like to see is that over time, we're getting better at addressing students' needs where they're at. Next slide, please. This is that same information. Remember that the middle school and the elementary schools took the same assessment. And you'll actually see a similar lining up of the categories in terms of what students said were easier and harder overall.
Can I
Again,
Can I ask a question before
Please
we move
do.
on to middle school about elementary?
Yep.
Can you talk about a little bit how the results consider what's age appropriate? Because I'm reading self-management and I'm thinking of my 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade and what might be age appropriate versus how they may be responding on these. Like, how is that taken into consideration when we look at these results?
Sure. So the assessment instrument that we adopted was created in conjunction with the Castle Consortium and a public school district actually from Nevada. And they went through that process and developed the assessment to try and make sure that it was age appropriate over a range of grades. And so we didn't create this measure ourselves. We kind of adopted it from something that had been published and is freely available. And if you look at the items themselves, I actually don't have the paper with me, but you can kind of get a sense for how appropriate it is. And what we did as a team last year was we said, would this be something that's appropriate for our 4th graders, our 3rd graders?
I don't mean the
I'm
question.
sorry, go ahead. Yep.
I don't mean the inappropriate of the question. I mean,
Expectations.
right. So like thinking about our 3rd grader, when we talk about self-management, and thinking about what's age appropriate for them to be able to manage themselves. Does that make sense?
It does,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think we have to set those expectations, and that's some of what when we're talking about that universal programming, right? So this year at the elementary level, our school counselors are pushing into the classrooms and co-teaching those developmental guidance lessons. And I think thematically, they're all developed again according to these CASEL competencies, but the progression there is more developmentally focused on this is what a third grader needs to know about how am I managing myself and my emotions, or how do I identify my emotions, versus something that might be a little bit more sophisticated for a sixth grader. And then when we get into the seventh and eighth grade, the programming is actually a curriculum it's called Second Step, that gets again more sophisticated in terms of the language and the concepts and the way that they're being taught. There is an appendix at the end of the mental health strategic plan that lays out the sequencing of those developmental guidance lessons that might shed a little bit more light on that. And then I'm sure that we could also get some more information specifically about how we're kind of distinguishing by developmentally appropriateness of those lessons.
And I think when we're looking at the data, we're looking at grades 3 through 6 together, but when it's being looked at the building level, for instance, when the counselors, the principal are looking at it, they're gonna look at third graders on their own and fourth graders on their own and make up for discrepancies of what is age appropriate between 3, 4, and 5.
Right, and when we provide that breakdown, it's a little bit more detailed and has some the fall data and the winter data together. We'll be sure to break those things apart. I didn't want to create too many slides here. Yeah.
Schools are actually they're getting down
to So again, this is the middle school in terms of the average student response for each of the categories. If you go to the next slide, we'll also do, again, the easiest skills were related to relationship skills and responsible decision making. And then the hardest skills, if you skip over to the next slide, again, all kind of line up under self-management. And honestly, this is not surprising to anyone who looks at it. When we're talking with middle school teachers, these are the things that are a challenge. When we're talking with middle school parents, these are the things that are a challenge. The fact that students are self-identifying this as well is nice in terms of kind of triangulating that theme. And now the question is, okay, how do we build these skills? And they're not easy. It's, self-management is a challenge, I think, across the lifespan, but this is something that they're at least acknowledging, right? So it's, something that we know that we can work on. Next slide. Again, how are we using the information? Those trends that we're talking about have been reviewed by the MTSS team at the middle school. We also, at the middle school and the high school in particular, have started using an early warning system where we're trying to look at trends in attendance and behavior and grades and really identify those students who might be slipping or be off track. This provides another data point that comes directly from the students that can kind of inform the picture of the whole student and what they're saying, in addition to how they're behaving and how they're attending and what their grades look like. And it also has some potential for use when planning our advisory lessons at the middle school. We have not gotten to the point where we're actually turning this data around and saying, hey, we're going to front load some lessons on self-management, or that we think that this is a real key topic area that we want to make sure that we're addressing over the next 3 weeks of our advisories. But that, again, that's something that we're kind of building our capacity to do right now. And then finally, we want to track those trends over time. If you go to the next slide, so the high school assessment is a little bit different. So last year, the team at the consortium said, elementary school and even middle school, the attention span was a concern in terms of students' ability to kind of take an extensive self-assessment. At the high school, they're really championing student engagement, right? And so there is an instrument published through the University of Minnesota. It's called the Student Engagement Instrument. It's, I think, 35 items. And it's, again, research-based, but it's really looking at these different areas or pillars that support a student's engagement in school and ultimately their perseverance in school. It's kind of connected with some dropout prevention literature. At the high school level, and I do want to really commend Steve Kohler and his team, because he's taken it upon himself to really embrace the administration of this student engagement instrument, to set aside time in the schedule for staff to reflect upon this. He's actually taken it upon himself to do some of the data analysis. That's where, you know, these tables and this structure actually comes from some of the work that he did. And just this past week, he led a session with the high school teachers where he shared back some of this information so that they could kind of digest and say, okay, what are the students telling us, and how can we work to continue to enhance engagement? And that's becoming such a challenge in, you know, in education with all the kind of competing interests on student attention. It's something that he's really championing here. And I just want to kind of put that out there and kind of commend his work. So what we saw in the fall, and again, we do have some more recent data that we'll be sharing with you at a later time. But what we saw in the fall is that students, you know, reported, you know, fairly positive reflections on family support for learning, future goals and aspirations. The thing that came as the, you know, maybe the biggest area of, or biggest potential source of a lack of engagement is this idea of control and relevance of schoolwork. How is what you're asking me to do relevant for me, and what kind of choice or agency do I have in that? Was kind of a trouble spot. And so thinking about, okay, how do we make this relevant? And also, how do we like demonstrate it is relevant? You know, this is draw these connections. It doesn't necessarily mean changing the material. It's just, let's make those connections a little bit more explicit. Next slide, please. These were the, again, most consistent kind of sources of engagement, just looking at item level analysis. So these are the areas where students rated the highest levels of engagement. So family and or guardian are there when I need them. I have some friends at school. I plan to continue my education following high school, right? So some motivational aspects. Next slide. And then these are some of the potential barriers to engagement. You can see a consistent theme there in terms of the category that is coming up as those lowest rated items. You know, the lowest one, most of what is important to know, you learn in school, right? So how do we make those connections clear again? Okay, next slide. Again, just to say, if you collect the data, you should be doing something with it. So how are we using it? This student engagement instrument data was a point of emphasis during the November professional development, as well as the January professional development at the high school. Again, with the early warning system, we now have a student provided source of information to kind of corroborate maybe trends that we're seeing with attendance, behavior, and grades. It has the potential for use again for planning building initiatives, and we want to make sure that we're keeping our eye on this over time. Next slide. Finally, and I think this is connected with the mission statement that's laid out in the mental health strategic plan, is we want to make O&J Roberts a place where everyone feels loved, safe, and heard. Interestingly enough, the student engagement instrument has items that directly correspond with kind of those three pillars. And so what did our students say about that? So at my school, teachers care about students. I feel safe at school, and adults at my school listen to the students. This is a baseline measure of where we're at with those things. We want to try and nudge that in a positive direction, right? We know that that's not going to happen overnight, but this is something to aspire to, and that's why we made it the mission of the mental health strategic plan. Okay. Next slide.
So that was just a review of goal one. Goal two for year two is really getting the staff perception or the staff input for what's going on in the schools in regards to mental health and the plan. And so, as Brian kind of alluded to and talked about, our school principals did some PD over January 29th, which was last Monday. Right? Monday, right? Last Monday. And we spent some time, we notched out some time during that day to really digest the plan. We wanted to give staff members a chance to really have time to read it, have time to digest it, to talk about it with their colleagues in their working groups, grade levels and departments and things like that. And so we developed specifically with our building level teams, as well as our mental health professionals in the buildings, Dr. Schneider and other people, really good surveys, 3 comprehensive surveys. It took a lot of time to develop, to send to teachers to have them fill out last Monday, specifically in most of the buildings, to really help shape how we move forward, not only this year, but into year 3, which is definitely the goal. The surveys for the teachers were developed with a major section, which is social emotional learning, universal practices, assessment of their skills, and then supplemental supports, and then subsections. Each of those sections were then related to rationale, resource, implementation, improvement, and collaboration. So we literally asked the teachers, how can we improve? How can we make these sort of tier one supports better? And what can we do to move forward into year 3? So we just got that data about a week ago. So we're digesting that data, and we'll present that data as well as we move forward. And finally, the last slide are our SAP numbers, so our Student Assistance Program statistics. If you recall, I presented this data to you in the spring of last year. So we're a half year out from where we were. So the black numbers to the left are our final tallies from last year. And then we have our blue numbers up there, which kind of look purple. They are our numbers mid-year. And it's a pretty good split down the middle for mid-year, because we are moved into the second semester. So as you can see through the numbers, they look pretty mid-year-ish if you take a look. Some of them are a little higher mid-year than others. But you will see as you kind of go down the road, our probably highest one statistical number would be the drug and alcohol screening by Devereaux liaison. Those are policy violations. I do want to make sure that's clear that our policy violations it's just as that, they're violations. So it could be luck, coming into a bathroom and seeing a student with a vape with THC. Something like that, or being caught or noticed by someone and then coming through, and we are using that as we're having that as a policy violation. So keeping that in mind, that could be happenstance at times based off of what's caught and what's not. Similar to some of the other ones, but as you can see, our inpatient hospitalization is down percentage wise, which is definitely good to see. We have some split numbers there. And then obviously we want all these numbers to be 0, specifically the last one, which is the hardest one for us to take a look at and really digest, which is that number 4 at the bottom. So I will provide updated numbers for you at the end of the year when Brian and I present at the end of the year in May with the full scope of the year. Questions from the board?
Yeah, Brad, thank you. I'm looking back at the sources of potential barriers to engagement, right? High school. And I'm looking at the principles of UDL. And these concerns should really dovetail with that initiative about provide multiple means of representation, provide multiple means of engagement, differentiate the ways that students can express what they know. It really looks like the concerns that students are raising, should be addressed by that initiative. And I know everyone isn't trained in that yet, but it looks like by incorporating that, you're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Mr. Rotoli, because the work that Dr. Soder's team is doing and the Pupil Services Department as well, as much as possible, we try to be interconnected and connect these pieces together, because there's so many different things, whether a student has a disability or does not, these sort of things come out, and we want to make sure we address them. And so with UDL, that's a piece that is obviously connected to this plan. Yeah. An even bigger umbrella would be the MTSS structure, which this comes under that, and so does UDL.
Thank you.
And I guess a comment on the way that my brain, when I was looking at the control and relevance of schoolwork, was also that what we hear from parents as the observed effects on their student and how connected they are to their schoolwork is usually a report on their homework. And it was very interesting to me as we went through the discussions around start time that whether people were for or against a change in the start time of school, all of them seemed to consider the amount of homework to be one of the reasons why they were for or against. And so it seems to me that our district still does have a higher load of homework than parents think that their children should have, that we hear that as a complaint at various different grade levels. And I would hope that, part of getting the students to connect to their work would be to make sure that we're eliminating homework that is not of value to their learning, but just busy work.
Homework could be a big stressor to students. Great point.
You know, when I saw this, Brad, it made me think back of the model schools work with Bill Daggett. He's been talking about this for 25 years. Rigor, relevance, and relationships for learning. And it seems like the relevance is an area that we still need to work on. Our kids are wondering why we're learning what we're learning in some cases. So this was really good. I appreciate you guys sharing this information, but that's something that struck me that I think we need to make a concerted effort through UDL to just continue to stress that relevance, why we're asking kids to do what they're doing. Are we giving them meaningful tasks that they view relevant or not? So.
Could you talk a little bit about if there's PD or maybe somebody that's on the committee from our gifted and special education departments? So I'm looking at these and I'm wondering sometimes mental health struggles appear differently for our gifted and special education students. So how are we working with those students to make sure that they're being looked at and these questions are coming out correctly and people are kind of observing in the correct way for this population?
Yeah, they are part of the process. So what's good about this is that when we talk about mental health and we have PD with our teachers, and when we have these sort of lessons with students, it's very inclusive. It's not just for one group or maybe the larger group at whole, but not specific smaller groups. So number one, there's a big inclusivity with this piece with students and teachers as we work through it. I think probably as we move into year 3, something to look at in regards to our different learners and what data can we glean from maybe specific students. And what's nice about our buildings is they can look at specific students, right? And they know, and they have, as they talked about the high school, they have this information for each one. So that might be something good to look at and look at that data and see what kind of stuff we can plan for that.
Are parents allowed, like if we call, are we allowed to get what the answers to these for our own kids? Or?
Sure. Yep. Yeah. We've had a few, not a lot. I've had maybe one, and maybe some building principals had a few, but yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it was the committee or the board. I think it's cool work for sure. I think what would be helpful for me would be like some real examples of things that are effective with this data. Like, we thought that, these numbers are changing and like what, practices, policies, or procedures are specifically changing, we cut homework in half and we saw this thing change, or we decided that, first 10 minutes should be quiet time and let people kind of get together, or whatever that is, like, instead of just, oh yeah, we looked at some numbers and we changed some things and now it's better. Like, I want some real world examples, or the opposite of like, oh, we had this procedure where, lunch was 15 minutes, we made it 20 minutes, now everybody's doing better. Like it could be either way, good things that we've changed positively or things that have gone, we thought this thing was true and the data was like, no, it's not true. So we rolled that back and now things are better. So just whatever those
Sure.
real world example. Maybe that's the next presentation.
Yeah, we could definitely add
Yeah.
that and provide more specific kind of real examples of what's going on maybe in specific schools and how that stuff relates to the data and how it changed over the course of the year. So we'll be sure to include that.
Yeah, I think, as a member of the policy committee, I think that will help us then, drive policy forward, whatever that is, discipline or whatever.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the policy that we just have on second reading actually this month is once again another step in the right direction when we talk about policy and talk about mental health. The suicide awareness and the crisis management teams is a big piece to what we're doing as well. So yeah, appreciate the feedback.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I made a note here and it's a good good something for us to remember as we look at presentations like this and we, dedicate so much of our time, energy, effort into data and what you said, Dr. Schneider, about, if we collect the data, you should do something with it. And I think that, Harkin Stephen, what Mr. Harmonos just brought up is, first we need to know what the problem is, but knowing what the problem is and then taking the steps to solve it is really what all of our goals are. And so I appreciate the tying in of those two things.
Thank you.
So, thank you. Okay. We are checking my time. It is about 7:17. We are going to recess for about 10 minutes and reconvene with school board agenda item 3 for the school board vacancy. As we stated that we would start that at 7:30. We don't have time to move on to something else. So we will recess. Please be back at 7:30. Thank you. Jordan, are we ready? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming back after the recess. We are going to move back or onto agenda item 3, which is the school board vacancy, where we will interview candidates for school board vacancy and motion to move one person forward. Or motion to move a person forward. We are, I'd like to just actually start by saying thank you to everyone who has applied for this. I know I have been someone who has been in that position. I have applied for an open seat on the board, so I know what that is like, and so I appreciate your willingness to volunteer and do so. So we are going to start with Mrs. Cooper. Mrs. Cooper, could you please come forward? Hi. So if you'd like to start by, you can have a seat, giving us a few minutes of introduction about yourself or what you would like us to know, and then we'll move on to the questions.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, I submitted my statement of interest, and if you had read it, you saw that I had a potential conflict tonight. So thank you to Rita and Jackie, who's not here, for agreeing if I was late that you would take me last. My son's basketball team last game of the season was tonight, and they went into it undefeated. So it was a huge game, and they won. So my throat is killing me because I was screaming. Anyway, so I just want to start off with expressing that gratitude. And thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. So to start off on a personal note, I have lived in the district for just about 10 years. And just a little bit about me. I love yoga. I love skiing with my family. I love beaching with my family, and giving back wherever I can, whenever I can, in my so-called spare time, right? Professionally speaking, accounting is my profession. Teaching is my passion. So I did submit, along with my statement of interest, my resume, my full resume. So you can see I have in-depth experience in the world of accounting, in the corporate sector for over 25 years. I have worked for small to mid-sized to Fortune 500 companies. So I kind of feel like I've done it all in that respect. I also have 15 years of teaching experience in various accounting and economics classes at the college level. My corporate, speaking specifically to my corporate experience, I believe that would make me an asset to the board as a whole, along with any committee I would have the pleasure to serve on. Obviously, I think the finance committee would be where I would best serve, where my experience would be most valuable. My teaching experience, I feel, puts me in a position to see topics, issues, discussions, etc., from both the taxpayer and the teacher's perspectives. I think these are positive qualities that I possess and I could bring to the table, along with my energy to give back to the community. And I do believe that that makes me a prime candidate for this open seat. I think I would bring all that to the table. I do have experience serving on an academic board in the past, and various academic committees. Those roles were served both as a parent and as a teacher at my various places of employment in the past.
So I think I would become, I know I would become quickly acclimated in becoming part of the board and becoming part of any committee that I would have the pleasure to serve on. In November of 2023, as you all probably know, I was on the ballot for the Owen J. Roberts school board positions. I was, as you know, unsuccessful, but I think that would speak to my commitment and interest. As you all know, it's a lot of work and time and effort in running a campaign. So I think I've proven that my interest is there, my commitment is there. So while I was unsuccessful, I do believe it's prudent for me to bring to the table that I did garner over 5,500 votes from the community. So if you do appoint me, you can rest assured that over 5,500 taxpayers support me being at the table with you all. I'm here tonight and I'm interested in the school board, the open seat because.
Let me read the question.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry.
No, because I just want to make sure
Sorry,
we're
I'm
doing,
kinda just
no,
like
that's okay. I just want to be consistent.
moving
for
along.
everyone.
Yep.
That is okay.
Okay.
Hey, why are you interested in serving the school board?
Thank you for that question, Rita. So I'm interested in serving my community. I currently serve on the zoning hearing board in my township, and I find that very rewarding. I feel I am ready to take on a different role, a broader role throughout the community. And I do believe that with my expertise, that this is the right place for me to give back and to be most impactful. And then one of the things that I think the biggest hurdles have been from the school board perspective, and I never envied any of you, is with the perspective of any annual tax increases. So I think with my accounting background, I can help. So I hope you let me help.
What do you believe are the responsibilities of the school board?
So I pondered over this one and I came up with a short list. I know that there's a whole breadth of other things that you all do, but the two things that stand out to me are community relations. I think keeping that open channel of communication is key. Having people comfortable to come in and speak to us, speak to you all, either at this table or on the street, in the supermarket, wherever. Budgets, because that's my wheelhouse. So I think that that is a very important part of the job. So analyzing, approving, monitoring, staying on task. And then the other task that really spoke to me comes down to curriculum, hiring and evaluating superintendent because he is running the show, because he's here, boots on the ground every day, all day. Policy, so many things around policy, creating it, implementing it, maintaining it, monitoring it, and so forth. Setting and monitoring goals of the board and overall leadership. So just being a leader for those in the community to look to for guidance, and if they need it, a voice to be supported.
And what do you see as the greatest challenge facing public education today? And how would you, as a school board member, address these challenges?
So this one I pondered on, and I came up with an interesting analogy related to my experience in the corporate world and also as a teacher. So I believe the biggest challenge is balancing what is best for the students versus what is best for the taxpayer. So finding that balance between giving the youth of our community a stellar education versus keeping taxes at a palatable level for our residents. So in my pondering of this, I thought about my work in large corporations. And when you're working for a corporation, you are serving and aiming to please your customer. And at the same time, you're being mindful of fiscal responsibility to your shareholders. Now, school boards are in a very interesting predicament because a lot of times your shareholder is your customer, in that your taxpayer, a lot of our taxpayers, there are effectively, from a corporate analogy, in this analogy, they're the shareholders, but a lot of those shareholders are also your customer via their children being in the school. So that's a very unique situation. So I think that I share that analogy just to expand on, finding that balance between, because the youth is the future, right? You want to give them the best that there is, but at the same time, we have to be mindful of the taxes that are being charged. So it's finding that balance. I think that's the biggest challenge to me. And that's what really stands out. But again, I'm the accountant sitting at the table, right? With that said, just to, call it out yet again, I have the corporate experience and I have the experience as a teacher. Now, my experience as a teacher has been very eye-opening because it is a tireless and, I don't want to say thankless because people do thank us, right? But, it brings a whole new perspective, having taught for these past 15 years, and the past 3 years have been full-time. So it's been very rewarding. I really love teaching. So, I'm sorry, going off on a tangent there. So in the end, I think I have a unique, perspective, a set of skills to bring to the table. I've been corporate, I've been, teaching. So from both of those, perspectives, I think I would be an asset, to the board. So there you have it. Yeah.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions for Ms. Cooper? on Something she talked about? She answered your question. Okay,
That's good.
very good.
Proactive.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. I appreciate
Yeah,
it. Congratulations to your son.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. It was a very exciting night. Yeah. I'm sorry. I have mints. I've been, eating the mints. I have water, but okay. But thank you all for your time. I appreciated being here and, thank you in advance for the consideration.
Okay, I'm gonna do my best to read this next name. Ms. Jostowski. Did I do okay? Okay. Can you pronounce it for me if I did not do it correctly, please?
Well, I married into that name,
Okay.
so I just say Miss Ski.
Yeah.
Whatever works.
There you go. Thank you.
You're
Well,
welcome.
thank you for being here.
Thank you for the
um,
invitation.
If you'd like to take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can move on to the questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I came here from Philly, which I think I've mentioned once or twice to some people around this table. And what I did is I came here in search of safety, prosperity, brilliant education. And what I will say is it feels like a different world out here in the country. And I'm very grateful for that. Now, with that experience and being somewhere that is very different, I think comes a different set of perspectives. So I didn't grow up with some of the wonderful opportunities that my children will now have. So within that, for me as a parent, the most important thing I can give them is education, because I did not have a strong foundation to jump off of when I was younger, going into adulthood. For me personally, working with the board in my lifespan, I believe that I can contribute to laying that foundation, not just for my children, but for every single student, every single child within this community. I think it is the most high value gift that we as parents, educators, administrators can give into our kids. I don't want my kids to survive the way I had to survive life. I want them to thrive. And with my ability to parent them positively, as well as educators and everyone surrounding that, it just pours more into them. And I would like to be able to pour into all of the children within the district as positively as I can. And I would love to be a part of the inner workings of the board to be able to deliver that.
I feel like you answered my why are you interested in serving on the school board?
A little, I mean, we
Yeah.
can revisit it.
No, well, do you want, I mean, I can ask a question. Why are you interested? Is there more that you want to expand on than what?
So in my perspective, I look at my children as it's like a team. I'm the head coach, and I think that all parents sort of start on that baseline. They are the head coach of their individual team, of their individual child. Now, saying that, there are so many different, parts of a community that go into that team. So you have the varsity and the JV. You have teachers, pediatricians, therapists, outside activities, cheerleading, football, band, what have you, that are very much integrated with these children on a day-to-day that add value to their lives. They have to work with parents, and parents have to work with this team. And I think that it is so important to do so positively in order to reach a goal together. You don't want that, goal reaching to be negative. You want that interaction to be positive. So parents feel like they're being heard. They feel like their children are being given ample opportunities in a way that they think benefits them and done in a way that is respectful to them. Also on this team, you have people that aren't directly interacting with your kids, such as people on the board. You're making decisions that will impact our young kids, the student body, and you want to make sure that in this inner working that everything is done together. And you, even if it's something that might be difficult or challenging or not even understood by the whole of the community, you want to try and turn that potential negative interaction into something positive so that when you get to the end goal and you find the objective, it's done in a way that the community rallies behind. Instead of going for, you know, the field goal, you want to try and make it a touchdown at every opportunity you can.
What do you believe, and hit on this too, but I'm gonna ask anyway. What do you believe are the responsibilities of the school board member?
For me personally, I feel like part of the responsibility is open communication and positive communication with, you know, members of your, like yourselves, with parents. You need to be able to be empathetic, understanding, take time out of your day, not saying that you don't, to hear every single concern and do the best to your ability to deliver answers that are positive and impactful to the people that are asking them. I don't think that the community wants to feel like they're never being heard. They want to be part of the process. They have a want to be part of the process, and it's the responsibility of a board member to take that seriously and due diligence in every asset or every aspect that you can. So with science, with research, with data, you also want to do that hand in hand with communication and questions and feedback and providing answers as well as data to the community at large.
And what do you see as the greatest challenge facing public education today? And how would you and how would you as a school board member address these challenges?
So I think it's actually an invisible problem. I don't think it's one specific line item. I don't think there's something that you can point to. I think that out in the world of social media, there's a lot of headlines that are very provocative, that it's very specifically named. For me personally, I feel like a really big problem is the breakdown of communication, where instead of a joint effort where it's positive and open-ended, it becomes a very us versus them mentality. And when that starts to happen within a community, there's a divide. When you start having a divide, you cut away from the possibility of solution, answers, and positivity. So when there is a legitimate problem where there's an objective put on that you want to solve for, you can't quite access the answers that you would if it was more open and more positive led. And if both sides of the coin felt like they're being heard and understood, because instead of we all want the best for these kids, it becomes, well, they did this and it feels an extreme. I have, this perspective, and it's not, the perspective isn't being heard, the questions aren't being answered, and I'm basically being cut off. It just adds negativity into something that I think, quite frankly, we all want the best for our kids and we all want the best for our students. And when you take away that, when you kind of go down this rabbit hole of cutting off communication, you take away the possibility of adding value and pouring back into our students, because you're taking half of these perspectives and you're not adhering to them, addressing them, or hearing them. Is it over? Any questions?
Yeah, follow-ups.
I had a follow-up.
Sure.
I know it's very hard to sit there and try to cover everything and keep your answers concise at the same time. Just going back to the first question, where you shared your background, could you talk a little about the skills and experience that you would bring to the school?
Sure. So career-wise, I've been in sales on and off for 15 years. So with that, I've absolutely added a lot of skills to my arsenal in terms of communication effectively and hearing in all different levels of sale. There is a client and a problem, and you have to solve for that problem. You have to do it kindly, patiently. You have to really hear them, and you have to work with them in order to deliver the answer to whatever it is they're trying to find. So that would be career side, kind of what my experience is. Sales between, my first sales job was working at Clinique with makeup. And through that, I went to real estate school. I did really well there. And then after that, I actually got into tech sales and worked with an IBM partner, and I absolutely adored it. And then I met my husband, and we kind of made the call that it was a very travel heavy career, and we really just wanted to be able to start a family and so that I could spend more time and raise our children in a way that I felt was conducive. So I would say also some of the skills I bring are I learned through motherhood, patience, time management, mediation, very good at those things, empathy.
Any additional questions?
What committees would you be interested on the board?
I think I would actually like to touch base with some of the school board members and sort of really understand where they feel like my strength would be best. I don't have necessarily a huge career skill set where it could be pinpointed. I am good at talking. I am great at listening. I love community. I believe in community. So I feel like I would really like to maybe sit down if awarded or voted into this opportunity to really make sure that what I bring would be used to the best of, quite frankly, the community. Because in my opinion, that's kind of who you work for.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
This one's gonna be easier for me to pronounce. Ms. Evans. Hi. Hi. So if you want to take, oh, sorry, chairs move. Want to take a moment to introduce yourself, or we go directly to the first question where I ask about your background, or are those two things one answer for you?
I'll go ahead and take a moment to introduce
Perfect.
myself.
Okay. go ahead.
So, first and foremost, I am mother to Marshall, who is in the 5th grade at French Creek Elementary School. I was born and raised in North Coventry. I graduated from ONJ in 1989. I did not take a traditional route from high school to college to career. Instead, I worked on a farm in Oregon for some time. I studied photography in Atlanta, Georgia, and I worked as a paralegal in Wichita, Kansas. And that's where in 2012, I completed my undergraduate degree with accumulated credits from 3 universities, 2 community colleges. And 2 months after I graduated, I had my son Marshall, and 2 months after that, we moved back home to my childhood home in North Coventry. I took some time to be a new mom and then decided to pursue my law degree. So I graduated with my JD in 2019 and sat for and passed the bar in 2020. Excuse me. Currently, I'm working for Commonwealth Communications. We work on messaging for progressive organizations throughout Pennsylvania. In my role, I focus on voter education, democracy defense, and combating disinformation. And the only other thing is that I'm also a member of the SAGE parenting group, the Special and Gifted Education Parenting Group. My son Marshall is in ATP, and I wanted to be involved with his educational growth and development. I am learning so much from being in that group, and I've also I think it's a really great start for a positive collaboration with the administration and parents to make those programs the best that they can be and really improve student experiences in those programs. So I'm really enjoying that.
So my first question was about background, including quality, skills, and experience that you would bring to the school board.
Sure. So as a lawyer and also with my experience working for a state legislature, I have experience working with legislation, analyzing it, devising it, thinking about making sure that it will do a policy or a law will do what you intend it to do. So trying to think about what communities would be impacted, unintended consequences that may come along with it. And I also have experience in explaining or the ability to explain complex legal notions to a wide range of audiences in a way that they can understand and relate to. In my current job, I work with a diverse group of advocates from all backgrounds, and we have to work together to come up with innovative ways to achieve our goals. And so I understand the importance of finding common ground and building consensus from shared values in order to move things forward. And then the other thing that I feel like I've learned from this work is that everyone has a different background and a different perspective and a different life experiences. And I try to be sensitive to that fact and honor stories and experiences that are different from my own.
Thank you. Okay. Why are you interested in serving on the school board?
So in my personal life and in my professional life, I am involved in trying to encourage people to become more engaged in their state and local governments and in their communities. I try to be engaged myself. I've attended school board meetings when I can. I've advocated for issues in front of the school board to advocate for changes I'd like to see them make. And so I think that serving on the school board is just a great way to serve my community and be more engaged. And another reason that's important to me, we've seen recently throughout the nation, throughout Pennsylvania, and even in some neighboring districts or districts closer to home, where boards have been enacting policies or removing beneficial policies, enacting harmful policies that really directly target certain segments of the population and of the community. And I want to be a part of helping this district kind of shore it up against those things and make sure that we're sustaining and enacting policies that reflect the basic notion that every child deserves a quality education in a safe and supportive environment. And that's regardless of what neighborhood they live in, the color of their skin, their religious beliefs, or how they identify. I want to help create conditions where all students can thrive and are set up for success. Because I think that when our student body is doing well, our entire community does well, and it's good for everyone.
Okay. What do you believe are the responsibilities of a school board member?
So I agree with Mrs. Cooper and I can list the different things, but in a nutshell, like as the governing body for the school district, pretty much every decision that they make has an impact on the operations of the entire district. And I would just say what's important is that the decisions that they make and the things that they do need to be done in partnership with the administration, with parents, with teachers and students and the broader community, always with the student's best interest in mind. And they have a responsibility to all of those stakeholders that I just listed to do what they do with transparency and accountability.
What do you see as the greatest challenge facing public education today, and how would you, as a school board member, address these challenges?
So when thinking about this question, I think at the national level, the many districts, maybe even universally, like we're facing a mental health crisis, and many of our students are dealing with mental health issues. And I was really encouraged to see the presentation that was made earlier tonight. I have to confess that is the extent of my knowledge in terms of what ONJ is doing to offer mental health supports. And, I was just encouraged but not surprised to see that they were working on this issue and gathering information to figure out what students need for that. And I don't know. I know that there are some initiatives at the state level. I don't know whether they'll pass into law or not. But there certainly is an opportunity there to see what's being suggested and possibly adopt those for the district if we think, they would work for us. Like we wouldn't have to wait to for them to be mandated, because who knows if that will ever happen. But I would just think too, you know, putting everything that we do, the decisions that we make through that lens of just asking, you know, can we do this in a way that's going to improve mental health, or how will this impact mental health? As an example, I was thinking of the buildings, the classrooms, the extra classrooms that have to be made because of to accommodate all-day kindergarten. And there's a series of decisions that have to be made in creating those classrooms, like the design of the classroom, the layout, the color of the paint, how much natural light there will be. And so all those decisions have to be made anyway. And so I think if we can approach those, and it wouldn't be appropriate in every situation, but to approach those by asking the question, like, how is this going to impact mental health, and can we do it in a way to improve it? And just keeping that in the foreground of the decisions that we make. And if I can just add one more thing, because that, again, the question of what's facing public education is very broad, but I do know that for Owen J. Roberts in particular, at the last town hall meeting that I was at, several families brought up concerns about really devastating stories of racist attacks that their children were experiencing. And you know, Owen J. Roberts, it rates so high on so many metrics, but we always get a really poor grade on diversity. And these families are, you know, feeling the pressure of leaving, of wanting to find another district to live in, to take their children to. And so this is something, it really has to be addressed. I know it's important to this board. I know it's important to the administration. And I would just, you know, emphasize for that we really need to make sure that these families are heard and that we're listening to them, and trying to get them what they need from us to help them. But we would be trying to change the culture of our schools, which is a big deal. So it had to be a community-wide effort, and it's something it would take a lot of difficult and uncomfortable conversations when you talk about race, but so you'd need to create the space to be able to have those conversations. And you'd need to kind of make sure we're giving ourselves and everyone else grace, just to be able to get that work done and do what needs to be done there. But that's about it.
Are there any additional questions from the board?
What committees would you be interested in?
I will fully confess to not knowing all of the different communities or committees rather. I know that there is a legislative liaison position, but I don't know what I would say for the others.
We have building and finance, L&P, curriculum and special education, and why am I blanking? Personnel. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know. I mean, I think any of them really would be a learning experience, and I don't know that there's any that I would definitely want to be on, and like the last woman said, I'd be happy to go where it was needed and where the board felt I'd be most useful.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Ms. Evans.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. I think we are up to, and I'm gonna do my best to pronounce this, Dr. Ilaria. Did I do- come- Please correct me if I didn't say. Ilaria. Okay, thank you, thank you. So if you'd like to take a few minutes to give us some of your background, including the qualities, skills, and experience that you bring to the school board.
Sure. So I am a dad of two children. I have a ninth grader at the high school and a third grader at West Vincent. So I've been in the district for 11 years. It was exciting to learn that I live on the border of the school district. So literally, like the neighbors' kids have the Downingtown graduation signs last year. My professional career has spanned 26 years. My research and work has been both in K-12 public school education and higher education. I'm currently a professor of math education at Westchester University, where I oversee the 7 to 12 certification program for future math teachers. I'm also the program director for two grants, one a Woodrow Wilson STEM teaching grant that we partnered with the School District of Philadelphia, and the other one is a National Science Foundation grant to increase STEM teachers in the area. Both of those involve years-long mentoring programs after they graduate from us, from a residency program that I helped create. Prior to that, I was a middle school and high school math teacher in New Jersey, as well as a K-12 district supervisor of mathematics. I also do a lot of work with both local school districts, as well as nationally with training teachers to implement effective practices in mathematics. And so that's kind of my professional background. Yeah, so the first question, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, with everything that I've done around education, I have a unique perspective, having been a teacher in the classroom, working with students, understanding those responsibilities and those challenges. And even though it's been a while, I still get an opportunity to go into schools and teach kids. Anytime I want to feel good, I will go support a kindergarten teacher on their math lessons because it's just awesome to do that. So, and also being a supervisor, being an administrator, I've done everything from evaluating teachers to selecting curriculum, to working with the assistant superintendent around policies and initiatives for the school district. Done presentations to the board, worked with curriculum committees previously with new adoptions, things like that. So now being in higher education, I kind of have a bigger picture of where the future is heading in terms of teacher candidates, where the field is heading. So I know a lot about things. I've learned a lot about things being in that role. And so that's given me an opportunity to, serve on a lot of committees at the college level, lead committees, and kind of be in that role where we're trying to change things for the better in terms of our own program and training teachers and things. And so that's kind of, I think, similar to what the role here as a school board member is in being able to collaborate and work together to do things that are bettering the opportunities for our students, for our teachers, for our community.
So my next question, why are you interested in serving on our school?
So I've done a lot of advocacy for education kind of nationally, and I speak at a lot of different conferences across the country. And so this was kind of an opportunity at my kids nagging, I guess, to kind of serve locally, right? Kind of give back to the local community and make an impact and hopefully find some way to help within the place where I live.
What do you believe are the responsibilities of a school board member?
So I think first and foremost, it's like vision, mission, kind of setting where the school is supposed to go, and then making sure you have the policies and the finances and the budgets and the resources to make those things happen. Another part of it is kind of the accountability and making sure those policies are being put into place and are working. Evaluating the superintendent position and those sorts of roles to make sure that we're trying to achieve that. And then I think the last piece is the community piece of it. Being someone who listens to the community, understands what students need, what parents need, what teachers need, what everyone in the community needs, and then trying to find a way to make all of that work within the system that we have.
What do you see as what do you see as the greatest challenge facing public education today? And how would you, as a school board member, address these challenges?
So this was a hard one. And for some reason, when I read this, I had this moment popped into my head last semester when I meet with my student teachers after the first time they go out. And two of them, and placed in local school districts, said, so they went into the teacher's lounge. And I was like, well, there's first issue. Don't do that as a student teacher. But other teachers like really questioned, why do you want to be a teacher? Which was heartbreaking from here's a brand new person who's like decided to go down this career path. And so it made me just think, there's a laundry list of things that we could pick, but I think kind of the umbrella issue or way I describe it is just a lack of respect for the profession. And then that shows up in things like underfunded schools, school safety, attendance issues, the political piece that has come into play. How do we play with artificial intelligence these days, right? And just the bombardment of issues that come up that teachers have to face, that school districts have to face in order to be able to really serve and support students. So I think, in my role as a school board member, I go back to the listening thing, right? Just kind of being a member of the community, hearing what its needs are, making sure that we're working on putting best practices into place that we know are out there, but also have to work for our own community.
Does the board have any questions?
And while I answer everybody else, what committee
Yeah.
would you be
Oh.
interested on?
Sure.
Interested in.
So I think, curriculum would definitely be a strength. Personnel is something that I've done in the past as a supervisor. Also, I'm on the evaluation committee for our department, so do a lot of evaluation components.
Any additional questions?
Quick question. You seem like a very busy individual. Just curious if you're aware of the time.
So I know, right? I'm currently on the state math council board. I'm currently in a local board as well for a math organization. And so I understand like the kind of the ebb and flow of things. I also know like what my time commitments are and what's available. And so I thought about that before submitting my materials, and I said, no, I can definitely do this. I have the kind of time because of the way that my profession and schedule works.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask you to explain Hilbert's paradox. So.
No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. We are going to take a recess at this time so that board members can individually look through their notes and have any other individual considerations that they would like. We can reconvene at 8:30, please. Thank you. Okay, we are back in session. Thank you. We're good, Jordan? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for giving the board some time to have a moment to think. I'm going to open it up to board discussion at this time. Does anyone have anything they'd like to discuss or any?
I just like to say that I think that I'm very impressed with all the candidates today and appreciate all your time and presentation. I think we've got some varied but very good experience from different areas of expertise. So
Yeah,
I think we can't make I think there's no bad decisions there.
Yeah, I agree with David, and I think it's so important that people are willing to come out and put themselves on the line for public education. It's not always easy to do.
I was gonna say, you guys didn't make this easy. Cause there's like, you know, there's a space for each one of you here on the board in regards to our committees and the skill set you guys bring. So really appreciate all four of you guys coming out, taking the time and, you know, really wanting to serve the community. We really appreciate it. And, we know everybody has very busy schedules. So once again, thank you guys very much.
I think, I would encourage you, if you don't make the cut this time, to come out again next time.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we are going to proceed as we have in times past when we've had multiple candidates for review. And I'm going to ask the board to rank the candidates in their preferred order. And we will use that to make an informed decision on what motion we will be putting forward to the February 26th meeting. Okay. Dr. Soder, would you please? Yes, I'm asking you to rank three, 1, 2, 3, 1 being your first choice, second choice, then third choice. And Dr. Soder will make note of that and give us the results at the end. And Dr. Soder will do so via roll call.
Are these gonna be like number one is like 3 points?
Well, yeah, number 1 is your first choice, number 2, then number 3, and yeah, we'll get the points allocated that way.
Mr. Harmanis?
Wasn't expecting to be first.
Just going in alphabetical order.
All right, my first choice is Mr. Alaria, and my second choice is Ms. Evans, and my third choice is Ms. Cooper.
Thank you. Dr. Melnizer?
First choice, Ms. Evans. Second choice, Dr. Alaria. And third is, Amanda Cooper.
Thank you. Mrs. Munson?
First choice, Ms. Evans. Second choice, Mr. Ilaria. Third choice, Ms. Drozdowski. Nobody else wanted to pronounce her name, I guess.
Thank you. Mrs. Peterson?
First Evans, second Ilaria, third Cooper.
Thank you. Dr. Vitoli?
First, Ms. Evans, second, Mr. Alaria, and third, Ms. Cooper.
And Mrs. Sable? First, Mr. Alaria, second, Ms. Evans, third, Ms. Cooper. So the top points is Mrs. Evans.
So at this point, I would ask the board to make a motion to put a candidate forward for appointment for the February 26th meeting.
I'll make that motion to put a candidate on. Sarah.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so it's okay. So this is, the motion has been made for voting on the February 26th meeting. A motion to, I will read the full. A motion to move Sarah Evans for school board approval to the February 26, 2024 school board meeting. Thank you very much. And as we said prior to the voting, and I mentioned at the beginning of this, I started my school board journey by applying for a open position and going through the interview process. And it was I've done big, wonderful things in my life and big, scary things in my life, and that was one of my least favorite moments of my entire professional life. So I have incredible empathy for those of you who put your names forward today, because I know what it takes to do that. And as was said earlier, for those of you who were not selected, my hope is that this is not the end of your involvement with this school board and with this district, because I think we have important work to do, and we welcome those coming to the table to help us do it. So, thank you. Okay. Okay. Okay, so we are going to vote to move this motion forward.
Correct. This is not a vote to confirm the candidate, but there is a motion, there's a second. This is merely to move this forward. Official action will take place on the 26th. Public comment will be permitted before the board takes official action. So this is not board action. This is merely moving something forward.
Okay. Do we need to go by roll call, or can I do it on? No. Okay, can we roll call in the same order, please, Dr. Soto? And this is an aye or nay vote to move the motion forward. Thank you.
Mr. Harmonis?
Aye.
Dr. Melnizik?
Aye.
Mrs. Munson?
Aye.
Mrs. Peterson?
Aye.
Dr. Rotoli?
Aye.
Mrs. Sabo? Aye.
Thank you very much. Yep, thank you very much. Okay. Yeah. We are moving on to agenda item 5, which currently reads Curriculum and Special Education Committee. We are not, hang on one second. We do not have quorum for that committee this evening. So I am going to request that, assuming this is okay, that we take this out of agenda item 5 and curriculum and move it to the full board agenda for tonight as our part of our working session.
One more time.
We do not have quorum for our curriculum committee to meet. We would still like to hear this presentation. Can we move it out of a curriculum agenda item to the full working session?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do tonight, so that we can hear this presentation, and we will move forward that way. So I think then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Soter, correct, for the 2024 summer enrichment activities presentation.
Okay. So we have 3 summer programs that we ask for the board to consider this time of year, because the planning for these programs occurs during the spring, and of course the school budget is not approved until much later. So actually what's projected right now are the anticipated summer camp opportunities, the enrichment camp opportunities. And we would be following the same procedure as we have done in the past. That is that we advertise those programs and permit families who live in the school district to register prior to anybody who happens to live outside of the district. We usually do that in March. And our other 2 summer programs that we would be including on the February agenda are the Academic Jumpstart program. This is the program for students who are currently receiving mathematics or reading support during their elementary day. So this is kindergarten through 6th grade students. This gives them an opportunity for a jump start for the beginning of the school year. So they're invited to a 1-hour session for reading or for mathematics or for both. And the other summer program that will be included on the agenda is Kinder Camp. This is the orientation that we have prior to the students beginning their kindergarten time with us. So they get an orientation to the building, they get to meet the teachers, get to meet their classmates before all of their older friends start the school year. So it's a softer start for our youngest learners. And so I'm happy to take any questions, but these are the programs that we typically include on the February agenda. I'm sorry, which one? Oh, so it's one of the baking camps. So yes, our family consumer science camps are very popular, as is fishing.
Yeah.
So under the 2024 summer academic courses, the online health and online physical education, I know that as we made changes to graduation requirements and those curriculums, we had a time maybe last summer where we weren't able to offer. So do we have 11th graders who, I'm sorry, 11th rising 12th graders who still may need to take a health class if they did health A during the summer or health 1?
Well, we now just have one course.
Okay.
So if they previously took Health 1, in most instances, they were scheduled for Health, the new course, this year. If they were still in need of that course, then yes, they could take this in the summer. This is the new course.
So the new health course will be offered this summer for those.
The new health course is the only one that
will
would
be
be
offered,
offered. So what we are currently running right now, like we are currently running Health 2 also. We would not, this is the last year that we're offering that.
So students who previously took health 1 but did not take health 2 or the new health class, their only option for summer is to take the new health class in order
And
to
that's,
meet the graduation
and that's what they would take if they took it during the year.
requirement.
I had a question about the online SAT math and reading. If I were a student who really wanted to improve my chances on the PSA, could I enroll in those?
Sure.
And
It's just
could
the
that
same
be
kind of practice.
advertised so that a student would know, well, I want to be a national merit semifinalist, and best way to do it is know how to take those tests.
Sure, that's certainly something that we can advertise to them. We run that course throughout the school year, and we run it just prior to each of the testing dates. So there's a lot of opportunities for that. And yeah, this is just one more.
And there's no, a rising 10th grader could take that, or a rising 9th grader, they don't have to be a rising 11th grader to take an SAT class or such.
Right. And they could also do it during the year because it's online.
Right.
So they could do that during the year as well.
Any additional questions about summer programming? Nope. We will not make a motion because we don't have a committee, but I believe this can move forward on its own. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That is all I have for my agenda this evening. So I am going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much.